The Thunderbolt movie comes out in like a week, and since I'm so excited for it to come out and I'm so excited to watch it, I decided to make a quick guide for those who haven't been up to date with the MCU or just want to watch the couple of movies that are important to get context about all the characters who are in the upcoming movie Thunderbolts. Um, so, in terms of my own knowledge and like rewatching movies and shows, I have been I haven't been really able to watch majority of all the movies I'm going to be mentioning today, but I have watched them before. I definitely need to rewatch them, right? In terms of the shows, I have watched Falcon and the Winter Soldier very recently, though. I haven't watched Hawkeye, and I didn't watch the latest Marvel project, Captain America: Brave New World, but that's alright. And this is as long. This is just because of like life and stuff, and it's also because um, I just haven't gotten around to watching them yet. Yet I am going to be watching them soon, though, right? So let's get started with my list, which I made on a Google Doc, and I can also share with you guys a couple of like resources that I gotten from other content creators as well on what kind of movies and shows to watch as well, and more deeper analysis of them up until like I get to rewatch them and create my own analysis videos. So first off on the list that of movies and shows that I'd recommend any of you to watch before Thunderbolt comes out is Captain America: The First Avenger. Captain America: The First Avenger gives off like great context on obviously who Captain America is. Steve Rogers Captain America, though, not the latest Captain America that we've had, like Sam Wilson, which is like the latest version of Captain America that we've had, and it gives like more context into what Captain America's character is supposed to be. It's all about his legacy. It's about him turning from a regular guy to becoming a super soldier using the super soldier serum and turning into Captain America, right? And it also gives context into how Bucky Barnes, who is Steve Rogers' best friend, like it introduces the character. It tells you like it just definitely shows like him and Steve Rogers working together because they were soldiers, World War II soldiers, I think. And yeah, it just gives you more context into the friendship between those characters, what happens with Captain America at first, what does it mean to be Captain America, and all that. The second movie on the list is Captain America: The Winter Soldier. This movie is all about the Winter Soldier, who is Bucky Barnes. Bucky Barnes gets so spoilers if you haven't watched Captain America: The First Avenger. Bucky Barnes falls off a plane, I think, or was it a helicopter? It was something like that. He falls off and he quote unquote dies. Yeah, he's captured by Hydra, and they brainwash him essentially and turn him into an assassin. And he goes on those missions where he has to kill specific people and his specific assigned people, but he also kills people, anyone in front of his sight, and it's honestly like a really cool character, and it's like very like a really sharp character, and it's very haunting. And you obviously get more, and you obviously get to see like how the Avengers eventually like get him out of the whole brainwashing thing once the Winter Soldier fights Captain America, and Captain America sort of gets him out of the whole thing that he was in, I guess I could say. I haven't watched that movie in a very long time, by the way. Like, I think I watched it when I was like 13 or 14. I am 19 this month, so it's been a while, right? And then just so you can get a more context on all the other MCU characters, like the OGs and stuff, you could watch the Avengers just so you can get an overall idea of what Marvel once stood for, and like what sort of like ideas, like what sort of like the sort of characters and sort of like traits that were enforced by the original Avengers, like Captain America, Iron Man, Natasha Romanoff, Hawkeye, or Clint, Thor, and the Hulk, right? Like, it just gives you an idea on who these characters were, how they were assembled, why they were assembled, and all that. But it's just context. Like, if you had to not watch it before the Thunderbolts, you would definitely have an idea of what's going on just based off Captain America: The First Avenger and Captain America: The Winter Soldier. Next on the list is Captain America: Civil War. It gives you a higher context on, obviously, Captain America and all the values that he reinforced, and how like things transitioned for the Winter Soldier character and all that, though I haven't watched it in a very long time. And after that, we have Avengers Infinity War and Endgame. This gives you huge context over what's been happening in the MCU for the past few years, right after like Endgame and Infinity War. It's like the pivoting point that changed the MCU from what it once was to what we have right now. And obviously majority of all the MCU shows and the latest projects stemmed off from like the idea of the snap and everything. And at that point, like, before you watch the newer projects, you obviously have to watch the older ones, just so you could understand like the gravity of the situation, how the characters have dealt with being blipped, and the characters who were left behind, and how they work together in Avengers Endgame towards stopping the major threat in the MCU at that point, which was Thanos, right? And then now we're gonna get character focused in the Thunderbolts, are obviously Bucky Barnes, Yelena Belova, Alexei, US Agent, Ghost, and Taskmaster. And at this point, I'm gonna be focusing more on Bucky and Yelena. First of all, to know more about Bucky's character and US Agent's character, you've got to watch Falcon and the Winter Soldier. I'm gonna definitely have to make a video about that show, honestly, because it was incredible. The way that, like, I have been putting it on the side for so long because I didn't like really want, at the time, which was kind of childish to say, to be honest, I didn't really want to see the transition between the old Captain America and then seeing like John Walker, which is the new Captain America, which is not the new Captain America. It was like Captain America for like 3 seconds. Like how the transition goes, and I didn't really like how like the new character was like appearing to be, because at one point it did seem very arrogant to me. But I'll be explaining that later on when I create a video for this specific show. But the Falcon and the Winter Soldier basically gives a lot of context on how Bucky is currently, who US Agent is, and it's a really good show, honestly. I used to not think it was gonna be a good show, but it really is. It's underrated. If anyone, honestly, if I see anyone say that it's not a good show, I will be debating them on the spot. And then we have Captain America: Brave New World. This definitely explores Sam Wilson's character as the actual new Captain America in the MCU, and it explores, like, from what I can say right now, the Red Hulk. Though I haven't watched that movie, though I do have a lot of context about it. And then character specific now, like, for sure, is Yelena Belova and Alexei's lore, which you can see in Black Widow. Basically explores like Black Widow's character, which, as far as we have known, was just Natasha Romanoff and Yelena Belova. But eventually, like, it shows like their lives from the beginning, from then when they were children and first recruited into the Red Room, and how basically that fake family dynamic that they sort of had, because they were a sort of like spy pretend family. It's a whole complicated thing that you need to watch the movie for. But like it shows like how they got into the Red Room, how they became Black Widows, and their character developments basically post Avengers Endgame. So and as we know, Natasha Romanoff was alive during the blip, which is like the event that they called the event when during around the time when majority of the half of the population was snapped. That's what they called it. They called it the blip. And coming back to the Falcon and Winter Soldier, during the blip, a group called the Flag Smashers emerged, and they were trying to push this agenda, and that's basically what Sam and Bucky and kind of U.S. agent and Lamar were fighting, and it's a whole thing that happened during the blip, and it was still in effect post blip, and it was like this whole thing. Coming back to Black Widow, it's basically just shows like Yelena's character post Endgame. She was blipped, Natasha wasn't. Natasha was like working on some stuff. Clint, obviously, with the whole stone situation, Clint and her were the only two chosen people to go grab the I don't remember which stone it was, but they were supposed to go grab a stone which required a sacrifice. Natasha sacrificed herself, and Clint was there, obviously, like they were both fighting over who should sacrifice themselves and stuff. Natasha sacrificed herself, and Natasha died, and Clint was alive. That's also kind of like the whole idea between the conflict that Yelena had with Clint and on Hawkeye, which is another show specific for Yelena's character, which just shows her grief and her sadness towards the loss of her sister Natasha Romanoff, or like at least like because she was like family to her to the very least, right? And then for I think for the rest of you could watch Ant-Man and the Wasp, for Ghost to be specific. It just like explores her character and introduces her to the MCU. Around the time when Ant-Man and the Wasp was like released, not a lot of people thought that it was gonna be an important movie, and I guess that's why they're bringing her over into the Thunderbolts to just not just as like a character that was pushed to the side or anything, but I think rather to give her like somewhat more importance into the whole MCU universe, I guess. And then we have, you could also watch the other Ant-Man movies if you just want more context into like the quantum realm, Ant-Man's character, his importance in Avengers Infinity War and Endgame, and how like time travel was led sort of by Ant-Man. But that's like if you really want to get into it, like, and get to know more about like those like unappreciated or like under what was it called, underrated characters, I guess you could say, because like not a lot of people know about Ant-Man, or like they don't really necessarily know more about his lore, to be specific. And then we have Wakanda Forever, and just add in the Black Panther movies as well to give you more context, I guess, just so you can know more about like Bucky's connection with Wakanda, how Wakanda in general has a major role in the MCU as well, right? And then whoa, that's a long list, but I guess that's it. But I also want to talk about the Thunderbolts in general. I am literally so excited for this movie, and I can't wait to watch it when it comes out. And mostly because Bucky Barnes and Yelena Belova are my current like MCU obsession. Okay, so just more context about the Thunderbolts if you just haven't watched any of the MCU content coming out recently, which would mean that you're living under a rock, to be honest. The main characters that we're going to see in the Thunderbolts, or are going to be part of the Thunderbolts team, part of the Thunderbolts team is Bucky Barnes, Yelena Belova, Alexei, US Agent, Ghost, and Taskmaster. The villain of this movie is like a really huge threat, and the Avengers aren't there anymore. That's mostly because like Iron Man is dead, Natasha is dead, who else is dead? Steve Rogers is an old man that he's retired. Clint is retired. The Hulk, I think he's retired or doing research right now, like in the current, like as far as I know, in the current MCU timeline. And Thor is out of world, which means that he's not on Earth at the moment, and he probably definitely isn't thinking about coming back anytime soon, as far as we know, right? So they're gonna face a villain, and as far as I know, it's called the Void. This is based on just the trailer. I haven't watched anything else related to the movie, and I've only watched like a couple like analysis points from like other content creators who analyze trailers, the MCU like movies and shows and trailers and stuff. So as far as I know, there's this villain, the Void, who turns people into shadows. This is you can easily see that on the trailers. And I think, and here's like a little theory, that the characters are going to be sucked into that void, and they would have to fight their own like most regretted like situations or like events that happen in their lives, or they might be facing the most like themselves in their most traumatized state. Like you're gonna see like people have been trying to cover up their mistakes and their regrets or make amends and stuff, face themselves from as their most raw form of like trauma, or like them facing the difficult problems that they faced and the things that they've healed from. And so I think that's a really interesting perspective right now. I don't know if I'm going to be crying in that movie theater, but if I am, I'm gonna be inconsolable, I think. And yeah, so I really hope that you and I get to enjoy the Thunderbolts movie. I really hope you enjoyed this video. So, and if you did, please like and subscribe and share it to anyone who you think would need this guide as well. I'll be making more videos soon, so stay tuned, and thank you so much for watching Noor's Voice.